Betsy Lavoie with the Fountain Hills Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to FountainCast, episode 5 in season 3. I'm here with Dr. Jodie Gruenstern. Am I saying that?
Gruenstern. Who would have thought?
Great start. Messing up your name already.
Dr. Jodie's good.
Okay, I'm going to start over.
It's a
Gruenstern.
Oh, you could keep that. That's quite funny.
Gruenstern.
Gruenstern.
Okay. It's okay, I messed up already.
It looks like Gruenstern, though.
It does.
And I get Gruenstein, and
Yes. So I'm here with Dr. Jodie with her book, Live with Your Pet in Mind. I thought it was fascinating. So thank you, Dr. Jodie, for being here today. So let's start out for those who are contemplating writing their own book. Before we dive into your book, share with us a little bit more. I know we did that on the introductory, but share with us a little bit more about your process personally.
Of writing the book?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess as I mentioned on the intro, that I had wanted to write a book my whole life, and I've even saved mail and email and all that to do kind of a memoir thing, which is not what this really turned out to be. This came out of a course I took called Launch Your Dream Book.
Okay.
I have been often struggling in my veterinary exam consult appointments with feeling pressured to get all the information out that I needed to in a short amount of visit time.
Right.
So one of the things I wanted to accomplish with the book is to be able to say to my clients, we can't cover everything, but if you want more information, I do have a book.
Right.
And so I included in here a little bit about all the different holistic modalities, so that people that were they wanted to maybe come to a different kind of a veterinarian, and maybe they knew a little bit, about, I want to go more natural or maybe more holistic, but they didn't even really quite know what that means.
Right.
The book will fill in a light way what all the different kinds of modalities mean. For example, people mix up the terms holistic and homeopathic all the time.
Right.
And I would even get a phone call in my office where my receptionist would answer, and the prospective client would say, does Dr. Jodie do homeopathy, or is she a homeopath, and they don't even know what that meant.
Right.
Like they just wanted holistic. They didn't necessarily want homeopathy, which is a very specific modality. So my book just straightens out some of the basics like that too.
Right. I love the part where you take a really in-depth look at what all the ingredients mean in food for pets. So I know that all of us want what's best for our pets. I think that anyone who has a pet, hopefully, I know there's some bad people out there, but for the most part, everyone who loves their pet and has a pet wants what's best for their pet, but they don't realize that the all natural bag of dog food that they bought at the grocery store was probably not the best thing for them. So
yeah, and not that natural.
Right, and not that natural.
Very processed.
Right.
And that natural doesn't even have a definition.
Yeah.
And premium doesn't have a definition. And that is why I included that section, because it's the old, misinformation out there, and you only know what you know, and if you don't even know what to ask,
right,
or if you're assuming that you're looking at the package and they have the peas and the carrots falling from the sky all over the front of the package,
right,
and you think that's fabulous, but you don't know how to read the ingredient label and what that honestly kind of special, sometimes even sneaky marketing terminology means, then how can you figure out where your current food even fits on what I like to call the nutritional ladder?
Right. I thought it was also fascinating when you said the very best nutrition for a dog or cat was their prey that had eaten vegetables that were processed in their bodies, and that's how the dog or cat would actually get those vegetables, because they were already pre-digested. That is insane. I know. I just thought that was so interesting. And how do you live 49 years old? How do you live 49 years old as a pet owner all your life without knowing that. It's just
It's
fascinating.
just one of those things you just don't think about. Really, it's so ingrained in us. I mean, we're brainwashed in different ways from little on, and you just don't even think about dog food being anything fresh at all, because we think dog food's in a bag and it's dry kibble, and that's dog food.
Right. Unfortunately, that's true.
Yeah.
And then I also found it really interesting. Tell me about, you were talking about all the nutritional benefits of, raw but not necessarily cold meat, and even for humans, all the nutritional benefits. But then you shared that you're vegetarian, which I am, and I have been for 12 years. And so I thought that was fantastic too. And I read why, but share with everyone why you decided that you can't eat meat.
Yeah, well, so I've been a vegetarian since 7th grade, and it certainly doesn't make sense to me to take care of animals during the day and then eat them at night.
Right.
So I've never been quite able to understand that. And I have to also, though, there's the vegan, which is a little bit different than vegetarian, and the vegan mindset, which I have had off and on during my life. I struggle to be like a good vegan. That's hard to do. But definitely when it comes to our furry pets, they are carnivores, and we are primates, is how I look at it. And so that's why I can, rationalize selling meat all day long to these animals, because I think that's their species appropriate diet. And I think everybody deserves to be able to eat their species appropriate diet.
Right. And everyone's so different. So what works for one might not work for another. And you even mentioned that for pets as well. How even every pet, you need to change it up.
Yep.
So it might work for a while. The most perfect food for your pet is perfect for a while, and it might change.
Yeah, well, and variety is best.
Yes.
Variety definitely keeps you out of trouble.
Right. One of the very first things I highlighted, it was at the very beginning, when you had mentioned how it is surprising the amazing correlation in the health of a pet guardian to their pet. And to the point where the pet can have diabetes and the owner has diabetes, and the same lymphomas and the same cancers. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. The diabetes example is one that blew me away the most. But even still now, I wrote this book quite a while ago, and even still to this day in my practice here in Arizona, I'm still seeing clients come in where either they themselves or some family member has something way, way similar to what their pet is there for.
Right.
And so, do we explain that with that they're both living in the same household, they're both exposed to the same pesticides, things like that, or does it have a lot to do with mindset? And so, the deepest underpinnings of dis-ease is what's going on in your head. And if you're constantly thinking about a specific problem to the point of worry, and I make kind of the distinction in the book too, the difference between worry, which is useless, and concern and take action, which is a completely different thing. If you're worried all the time and that's all that's going through your mind, then that's what your unconscious starts to believe is real. And because our pets are so telepathic, and there's an example in my book of a study that demonstrated how telepathic they are, they are in your head all the time. And so that's why I titled my book Live With Your Pet in Mind, because you need to be thinking good thoughts, positive thoughts, as much as you can, not only for your own sake, but for your pet's sake. Because they are the sponge, they're the canary in the coal mine, and so we need to be paying attention to what we're thinking and what kind of lifestyle we're exposing them to.
Well, and also to me, I felt like this, I call them self-help books, but I love motivational books, I love self-help books. It doesn't matter if you have a pet or not. I feel like this is in that realm that it's truly, it focuses so much on self-care so that you can provide the best self-care for your pets, that I do think that you don't even need to be a pet owner to really appreciate this book. I thought it was fantastic.
Great.
Yes, kudos to you, Dr.
Thank
Jodie.
you. Or it makes you want to either go out and get a pet, or
Right.
or if it's not part of your lifestyle to be able to do that. We know that pet animal bond is so important, so helpful. Sitting here, if I had my dog in my lap right now, my blood pressure would probably be lower.
Right.
And so, spending some time at the Humane Society and those times when they ask people, like during 4th of July and there's the fireworks and all of that, and they're like, oh, please come in and sit and read to our animals in the shelter. And
sweet.
So that's a win-win.
Right, and even here locally in our Pals Inn and Rescue Pals, I know that they have dog walkers at Rescue Pals that will come in, and even if they can't foster a dog, they will just come in and walk them every day or a couple times a week, which is great because they're in a cage until they find a home. Yeah. And so, yes, that's a really good point. So even if someone can't be a pet owner, perhaps this might inspire you to do that. So let's talk about the telepathic that you mentioned. So a lot of people might think that's a little woo-woo, right? I loved your examples. I loved the study in the UK of the woman who went for tea. I loved it. It's fascinating. And even that something that people can relate to, where all of a sudden, and you said this in your book, all of a sudden you look down and your dog's looking at you and you say, oh, they need water. And they've literally been trying to tell you for 10 minutes, I need water. Right, my bowl is empty. And you think, well, you just happen to look down. I think that's fascinating that they have been trying to tell you for a while that you need to look at the water bowl. It is empty. But you think you just happen to look down and see that.
Exactly.
Right.
And something that sort of took the woo-woo out of that and out of the idea of animal communication or being an animal communicator, for me, was the woman that I dedicated my book to, who came in my practice, did some animal communication sessions. I was able to often verify some of her findings with my medical testing or with my physical exam and those kinds of things. But what I liked in her class is that she taught us that we all have that innate ability. So it's not anything special, magical, that few individuals out there have. We all do. It's just that we suppress it. And one of her examples was the little boy that's sitting in the kitchen and says, Mommy, the birdies want some more, need some more bird seed out there. The birdie's telling me it's hungry. And the mom says, oh, the birdies don't talk. And right away, that's that, childhood feeling and, innate being gets suppressed.
Right.
And then that keeps
I'm
happening.
wrong. That was a dumb thing to say. Right. All the self-talk.
Yeah. And so she just teaches, don't, if all of a sudden some thought comes into your head when this dog's walking by that, you don't actually visibly see something, but you just have this feeling that his back hurts. Don't suppress that, try to carefully say, is your dog's back okay? Is he having trouble jumping up on the bed lately? Right. And then maybe they'll go, well, yeah.
How'd you know that? That's weird.
Yeah.
No, but if you can help someone, I think that's great. Yep. So once you started to work with her, did you naturally find that you had that and you were suppressing it? Were you able to bring that out more?
I do think that I probably have been disappointed in myself over my career that I didn't let that just happen more, and that I always felt like I had to medically verify everything. Right. So I would say working with her let me believe that in myself more. Right. And I always have done the thing where I talk like my animals would talk with their little voice. Yeah. So. Well,
and the fact that you have a study that proves it. I think, you can have all the little scenarios in your practice that you share with people, but to be able to share a third-party study that proves it, I think is really valuable.
That UK study is really good. If you find that on YouTube, they actually show the pet parent having the tea in the restaurant, and then they show the dog at home in the household with cameras, and they have the time
stamp going.
Timestamp going, yeah, and they're showing how it's all coming together at the same time.
I'll have to look that up. That's really neat.
It's kind of fun.
So share with me a little bit more about, in your book you talk about in your practice how you started out, as a doctor of veterinary medicine and just, doing the science diet, food, and then allowing yourself almost to move into the more holistic approach. So how long did that take before you fully allowed yourself to just be Dr. Jodie?
Well, I think it was about 5 or 6 years. So I've been a veterinarian now for, I think, 36 years.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. And so for the first 5 years, I was working for another veterinarian in Muskego, Wisconsin.
Okay.
And so when I left there to start my own practice and have my own little space in Old Strip Mall, that's when I had the freedom to start doing different things. And then I guess thankfully for whatever kind of intervention happened to make me open up my mind, because we really again get brainwashed and set in our ways, and we're veterinarians, I think as a group, are pretty stubborn and pretty slow to come around to new things. But it was different technicians, clients that crossed my path that were already on this kind of a page. One technician that had world champion agility dogs was feeding raw food.
Okay.
I don't know if I mentioned it in the book or not, but I was sitting one night waiting to pick my daughter up from ballet, and a late night radio program comes on, and it was a woman that was routinely raising Newfoundland dogs to be 16 years old, which is kind of unheard of.
Okay.
And she was feeding raw food. I'm like, maybe there's something to this.
Right.
And then I had a client that came in when I first brought in my first so-called natural kibble diet, which I considered a step up then from what I was doing, because I had learned about artificial preservatives like BHA, BHT, and ethoxyquin and how toxic those are. And I kept, every time the rep for that food came in, I'm like, you need to get those out of your food.
Right.
He'd like, but they're just a small amount and they preserve the food and we ship all over the world, so we have to do it. And I'm like, but small amounts of things that are bad for you are cumulative, and that's not good. So I converted to this new natural kibble, and then I had a client come in and I'm like, you have to try this new food. She's like, Dr. Jodie, I've been feeding that for years, but I was afraid to tell you.
Oh my goodness. How funny.
And, and I'm like, and that was like a wake up call, because I'm like, shame on me for being, so stubborn and adamant about something that that my clients were afraid to tell me.
Right.
And so now, of course, I hear that all the time, where all these people that are feeding raw food to their pets, they're afraid to tell their veterinarian.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, some of these veterinary clinics, if you tell them that you're feeding your pet raw, they want to put you in a special room. It's like they want to do a foot wash on you.
Right.
And everybody's like, oh, I gotta go wash my hands. And so there's just so much. It's always, about fear. It's either about being afraid of it or needing to make money on it.
Right.
And that's what's the holdback on a lot of progress.
Oh, yes.
So I'm just thankful that I opened my mind to all of this, because now, after 30 years of doing it all this way, I would never go back.
Right, I'm sure.
And if the other way were better, and I've done it that way, then wouldn't I go back?
Of course you would.
Yeah.
Well, and also, even in reading your book, there's been some people here in town that I know, other chamber members, who have had some unfortunate things happen with their pet, and you actually cover a few of them. And I'm like, if they would have just seen Dr. Jodie, maybe that would have had a different outcome.
Well, we all have those regrets.
Right.
We have to try not to do that, where you do your best with what you know at the time.
Well, sure, of course.
And I've learned so much. I mean, that's what my stories are all about, all the animals, they're like my teachers, and that I've learned from them.
And the fact that you wrote this in 2015, right? Was it 2015? 2014?
You have to look at the date.
Yeah, 9 or 10 years ago.
Wow.
Well, and the only reason I looked that up is because you had mentioned something in there about vaccines and the coronavirus, and I was like, wow, she says all of this before any of it happened.
Oh.
So if you would, I don't want to go into all that because it's so, so polarizing, but I do love that you talk about titers and vaccines. So, and I have 2 kids that I believe in that too. I will never vaccinate unless I can get a titer test first. And so for pets, if you could talk about that really quick.
Yeah, and as far as discussing titer testing, that shouldn't be polarizing at all for anyone, because that is science, and there are studies, there's all kinds of data that shows that you can draw blood from the pet and check their titer level, which is a measure of their antibody response that they have in their body to vaccines that they've gotten in the past, or natural exposure in some cases. So, but the main 3 are distemper, parvo, and rabies. There's no such thing as natural exposure for rabies. You get rabies, you're pretty much gone.
Right, okay.
But there's a vaccine. And so if you either have been vaccinated for distemper, parvo, rabies, or you've been naturally exposed to distemper, parvo, or even I call it sniff immunization. So if puppies are playing and one puppy is not vaccinated, but the others are freshly vaccinated, and you take that puppy and let them sniff the others because they've been vaccinated with a modified live vaccine, which gets shed, then that puppy that was not vaccinated can get immunized in that way and actually be protected. So if we draw blood, we can measure that level of protection and determine if they're already protected, then why would you give them another vaccination?
Right.
Because, I mean, it is true that every time you get any kind of a vaccination, you're taking a risk. And maybe it's a small risk, maybe it's a big risk. But why do that if a titer shows you're already protected?
Right.
And that definitely includes rabies. So I'm not saying don't get a rabies shot. Heavens, not in Arizona. I mean, there's the javelinas and the coyotes, and there's all sorts of ways that your pet could get rabies. So by all means, go ahead and do that initially, but then do the titer, find out if they need it again or not. Do they need it again? Do they need it again? It's like, and what we've learned is actually, no, they don't. And the truth of it is, even for us as a professional that's at risk, we do get rabies vaccinated, but then we get titered.
Right.
And so it's even the same, governmental organizations that are out there saying repeat for pets are saying for us, no, don't. You get a titer done because they understand that there is a risk with getting it, and especially why do that if you don't need it.
Right, exactly.
So I think everybody should be on the same page that indeed we would actually all be safer if we actually had a law in every state that said that all dogs should get titer tested, because then we would show that they actually did mount an immune response, because there's a few out there that don't even respond to the rabies vaccine, and we're all assuming that they're protected.
Right, and they're not.
Yeah, so if our concern is community safety, then it makes more sense to actually be doing the titer testing.
Right. That's great. I think that's like a PSA today. If people have not heard anything else, then
my gosh.
That's okay.
Okay.
We can edit that
And
in.
I put, okay, good, because I really thought that I had this off. And I don't even know how to get it to stop.
It's not wanting to stop even with you pressing the button.
Oh my gosh. I really
That's right. He can edit that out.
Okay, good.
So I also wanted to ask you along the lines with vaccination. So we have 2 little tiny dogs. One is 3 pounds fully grown and one is 7-8 pounds fully grown. And they're pampered. They don't go to the dog park. They don't even like to go for walks because they're not a working dog. They're a lazy dog that sleeps all day, but they play and they, happy dogs. But we didn't vaccinate them because there's literally no reason. And also when I first got the new baby one, the 3-pound one, when I learned that they give the same amount of vaccination, at that time she was under 1 pound for an 8-ounce, dog puppy to a 98-pound puppy. I just thought that was, how can you possibly give the same dose? So, and I don't know anything about that, but can you speak to that?
Sure. So a couple ways to kind of look at that is that, are we overdosing that little dog or are we underdosing that large dog?
Right.
And so in reality, it's neither, because that amount of inoculum in that vaccine preparation is there to stimulate an immune response, and it's not the same as giving a drug that has to attain a blood level, and it could be too much of a blood level and be toxic.
Okay.
Or maybe if I say, like, if you're allergic to peanuts, one peanut is bad. Does it really matter if you eat 1 or 3? Probably not. Really, 1 is pretty detrimental.
Right.
So I differ from the crowd that is saying it's so terrible to be giving that 1 ml across the board.
Okay.
Because of what we're talking about with this stimulation of the immune response, it honestly doesn't matter. And this comes, what I'm trying to share here is from the mouth of Dr. Ron Schultz, who's one of the most world-renowned immunologists. He was one of my teachers, and he worked with a lot of vaccine manufacturers, but also the titer companies in developing titer testing.
Okay.
So when he does his presentations, it's all based on science and studies, and he's pretty honest and straightforward, and he talks about that topic and how that is, one thing that's overblown, that actually it doesn't matter.
Okay.
So if you're going to have a reaction, you're going to have a reaction with a small amount or a large amount.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's
good
to know.
To lay your fears about that.
Right. Well, and I researched that at that time, that was 2.5 years ago, there had not been a case of rabies in Arizona in a dog in 99 years or something. And so I was like, again, why am I going to put this poor little puppy through getting a rabies shot if she literally is in our arms all day almost?
Exactly.
She's just so pampered.
Yep, it's not airborne. They need that exposure.
Right.
And you could say the same thing to some degree about heartworm in Arizona too.
Really?
Because not every mosquito carries heartworm.
Right.
You not only need the right combination of heat and humidity to get a lot of mosquitoes, but you also need a population of dogs that have heartworm.
Right.
The mosquito bites them and then bites your dog.
Okay.
And when you look at the American Heartworm Society map that keeps loose track of some of that across the country, a lot of the cases that are heartworm positive in Arizona have just come in from elsewhere. So when they come into a shelter, they get tested.
Right.
If they test positive, they'll receive a microfluoricide right away, which kills the babies in the blood and eliminates them as a source.
Okay.
So it's not like, we've been bringing all these dogs in from out of state, so now we brought this all to our state.
Right.
Not so much, because as soon as they come in, that gets taken care of, and it's not something that's going to keep getting transmitted. But yet that goes on the books as being an Arizona case of heartworm.
I gotcha. Okay, very
So you
good.
really have to spend some time with a veterinarian that's knowledgeable about the pros and cons in this kind of a topic, and will really give you all the information to make your own informed decision about it on an individual basis, because the lifestyle of your pets is very different than the person that might be out there where a coyote, is going to come over the wall, and with your dogs, if they were outside and a coyote came over the wall, they'd be gone. Exactly.
Right.
They're not going to be winning that fight and then going on to transmit rabies to you.
Exactly.
So
unfortunately, that is the case.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So in closing, Dr. Jodie, is there anything that you wanted to share that we have not touched on in the book?
I don't think so. Maybe briefly, I'll say that. Going back to the animal communication thing, and thinking that if there were something I were going to pick out of my book to, read or talk about that probably had a huge impact on me personally, is my soul dog, hurt dog, Mork.
Yes.
Who did a couple of interesting sort of telepathic things. And one was that he was a ball dog. And he would say, throw the ball, throw the ball, throw the ball. And I'd throw it, I'd throw it, I'd throw it. And I was, man, throw the ball, throw the ball, throw the ball. And then if I got in my head, this is going to be the last time. I'm not going to throw that ball anymore.
Right, we're done.
Then he wouldn't bring it back.
He knew.
He totally knew.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that was so great.
So he could tell a lot of secrets about me too if he wanted to.
I'm sure all of our pets could.
Yeah, he was definitely in my head.
I love it. Well, and I do think too, I obviously recommend Dr. Jodie's book, Live With Your Pet in Mind. And it inspired me to want to bring my pets to you too. So I'm sure that's not its purpose, but that's a nice byproduct as a local veterinarian here. Because even when you talk about, as soon as a new client comes in and brings their pets, the first thing you do is sit on the ground with them and just talk and just let them feel comfortable, which how different is that from going to a clinical veterinarian that people are all used to, that you go in, you put them on a cold metal table, they're way up high, they're shaking like a leaf the entire time, and then all of a sudden they're poking and prodding and putting things in the rear end, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So, I just love your approach.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. It makes me feel so good when people say he doesn't shake like he does at the other vet.
Right.
Oh, he likes you, or he comes over and sits in my lap, and they're like, wow. Or they'll say, I'll go to hand him a treat and be like, oh, he doesn't eat treats at the vet, and then he gobbles up the freeze-dried meat.
Right.
So, or when they say like, oh, it smells so good in here, because I'm big into essential oils and stuff. So. Yeah, so that makes me feel really good. So.
Yeah.
And I hope that also too, though, selfishly, anybody that reads my book, I hope they review it on Amazon.
Yes.
Because then that's honestly going to help somebody else too. So the better,
Right.
the more I appreciate this, because the more I can get this out there. My visits might be too costly for someone, but my book's only $15.
Right,
So, and honestly, everything in here is kind of in here, so it really gives people a good start.
Yes.
So,
and I know I purchased mine on Amazon.
Oh.
We would like to have them in our chamber gift shop. I think we do.
They are.
Yep, we do have them now. So you can come, if you're here local, you can come over to the Chamber of Commerce gift shop.
And soon on audio.
And soon on audio, right? For those of you who like to also listen to your books. That's exciting.
Yeah,
so as soon as that
Kindle or whatever too.
Okay. So as soon as that launches, though, let us know, because we'll put it on our chamber newsletter so that people will know, and we can even update this YouTube link so that people can know that they can get it in the audio version too. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching today's episode, Live With Your Pet in Mind with Dr. Jodie. And just like we want you to like, review, and share her book, we'd love for you to like, review, and share our podcast. Thanks so much and have a great day.